is very basic and simple, but I'm not a coder, I'm not into IT specifically, but I am into the concepts. So the next level is we organise the data into information. And so information is essentially just stuff that's out there. Beliefs, attitudes, information like the media and so on. Now, obviously in the last 4 years, there's been a lot of manipulation about, information in the public space. I can rightly argue that social media and the internet hasn't made this thing any simpler, because in this space we get some really crazy ideas coming out. I don't believe how many people still subscribe to a flat earth, right? Or questioning some of the things that we know scientifically. So from information we go to knowledge. Now that is where we start sifting through the information and organising it and structuring it and putting it together in a way that we can utilise effectively within the body of science, the body of philosophy, the body of inquiry. And knowledge is useful at a pragmatic level as well, but knowledge doesn't contain within it necessarily an ethical or a moral basis. Knowledge can be simply something that I literally cognitively know. Does it necessarily mean it resonates or aligns with what my experience is? No. And this is where we go to the next step, which is, what is wisdom? And so, like most of us in this century, one of the sort of steps that, one of the sort of reactions I'm going to see out there is that people immediately going to jump on Google wisdom, and up comes Wikipedia. And Wikipedia basically says that wisdom, sapience or sagacity, is the ability to think and act using knowledge, experience, understanding, common sense and insight. Okay, so quite a lot more complex than simply knowledge, right? Really, really important. Now, I'm going to throw something else in there, and that is that there is an intuitive element and there is a ethical, moral directive in wisdom. And that is that wisdom is how I articulate fundamentally all that stuff towards a better place for myself and others. All right, so, I do not subscribe to moral relativism. That is to say that, every culture has its own moral set and we should all respect that and so on. Let me throw in a very simple example. If the culture believes that sacrificing little children and burying them under a post that is going to support the house, I'm not on board with that ethically or morally. To me, that is not acceptable. It's based on a belief that absolutely has no foundation in anything that's about the betterment of the individual or the community. It is simply a belief that is actually quite disturbing, and we have many, many of these beliefs still active in our society. So no, I'm not going to be able to sort of necessarily stand back and allow that to happen, right? But we still act on a lot of these sorts of beliefs as if they were true, to the detriment of others. We're really struggling at this point in time in our culture to have religious beliefs that do not infringe, encroach, and attempt to dominate others. And I reckon we need to sort that one out quick smart, otherwise we're going to find ourselves in another 7th century AD or CE, depending on which definition you want to use. I would have thought in the 21st century we would have progressed further to be more inclusive, to be more respectful and democratic, egalitarian, and to be more distributive, and to be more collaborative. I watched a YouTube video this morning, in fact, and it was an interesting thing. It was a thing about this guy going around in Israel and asking these questions of Palestinians. One of the questions he asked was, if you're a Muslim, would you marry a Christian? And it was really interesting because a lot of the guys had no problem with it. And I'm sort of sitting there going, oh, that's really interesting, that there is a depth in that I hadn't necessarily anticipated. And my bad, okay? However, when he started asking women about this issue, one of the things that became very clear was that for women to marry outside of Islam, it was forbidden. And that's where I went, okay. What we got again here is a demonstration of an entrenched patriarchal attitude. It's okay for men to do, but it's not okay for women. And so, again, this is not just confined to Christianity, Islam. It includes many, many, many different religious beliefs that have these constructs, these beliefs that are not based on anything other than a religious framework. And if we are going to evolve, we need to examine what it is that we believe a lot more closely. And I'm not saying you should give up your religious belief. I'm saying, how do you reconcile the issues between a patriarchal framework that underpins most monotheistic religions in particular, and the humanitarian or humanistic principles of equality, of inclusion, of tolerance, of compassion that we so desperately are going to need to resolve the cultural, political, and material issues that we're confronting with, including ecological issues. Right? We have lived on this planet, in a sense, exploiting it, and we've recognized, at least a lot of us have recognized, that that is like a bullet train heading towards a brick wall. At some point, the impact is going to be disastrous, and we're seeing it here and now. So, for me, have a think about this. I offer this as a gift of thought, coming from a place of wisdom and compassion and tolerance. And that is one of the things I'd like to inspire in us as men. If we are going to transcend the confines of a zombie ideology like patriarchy, it is time to shed that cloak and move beyond it. Because it's not just about women. As I've said before, patriarchy is more responsible for male deaths than anything else. And do we want to perpetuate that? You know. And if we need to think about what, is this healthy for my son as much as it is healthy for my daughter, for my wife? And on that note, I'll sign off and I'll be checking in with you again in a week's time. Until then, goodbye and embrace change.
Thank you for listening to Inspire Change with Gunter. Gunter Swoboda does individual and group coaching for men looking to grow. For more information on this and the global Making Good Men Great movement, check out goodmengreat.com to get into contact. If you have a topic for the show or would like to be a guest on the air, please email producers at miranda@noirtainment.com. That's Miranda, Miranda, at noirtainment, noirtainment.com. Thank you, and always keep inspiring change.